The next example is U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. You know this from my previous talks and books. In Breaking India, I've mentioned quite a bit about this. This is a think tank, in a sense, set up by the U.S. Congress to produce an annual report on religious freedom in all countries of the world except the United States. And so it admonishes India and says you don't have enough religious freedom, and admonishes few other countries and puts them into different categories of from very good to very bad and so on. So the China people have their own think tank, and that produces its own human rights report criticizing the United States. So it is really a U.S. Commission of United States Commission on Religious Freedom versus China's equivalent. Okay, now India doesn't have one. India apologizes. It says, we're very sorry, sir, we will be better, please, we are, whatever. I think this has to stop. I think this business, we have to, in order to be respected, America respects strength. That is why they respect China. So India should produce a think tank which actually produces similar reports. We should follow what China does. So now let me come to China. China has, and I saw this very interesting report that they have put out, and every year they're putting out this report. This is a report, almost 100 pages, which is China has a think tank that evaluates all the think tanks of the world. They look at Chinese think tanks, American think tanks, Japanese, European. They have two Indian think tanks also. And they have come up with China's own evaluation system based on their grand narrative. So they have a clear grand narrative of China, its past, its present, its future, and they are not afraid of what people might think. The entire project team consists of Chinese, project leader, data collectors. There are about 25-30 people named on this report who put it together. Every one of them is a Chinese. They're not running around getting help from this American or that American group. They're going to do it on their own. Okay. So here it says they have defined that what is a think tank according to their own criteria. What are the analysis criteria they have come up with? And then this is very interesting. They've said the construction of think tanks with Chinese characteristics in the global perspective. So they're saying we're going to tell you how to do a think tank keeping the Chinese grand narrative and Chinese perspective in mind. And that is a think tank we're going to encourage. That is a think tank we're going to work with, fund, evaluate them well. So now, India is being rated by Indian think tanks are being rated by two systems, neither of which is Indian. One is in University of Pennsylvania. There is an annual ranking compiled by something called the Think Tanks and Civil Societies Project. The Think Tanks and Civil Societies Project at University of Pennsylvania. And they go through all the think tanks according to their criteria, what work should be done, what work is good, how to evaluate. And so every Indian think tank is trying to be in their good books, get better ratings, trying to impress them. When they come to India, they're trying to really be on their side. So the Indians are sucking up to placating these Western think tanks in order to get better rating. And the second ratings in the whole world is being done by the Chinese. So Chinese are following their own rating system, and other people know if you want to do business in China, you want to be in their good books, you want to have an alliance with China, then you better understand what their own thinking is like. So we in India do have think tanks, but we haven't come up with this kind of a very global audacity to say we got a grand narrative, we have our own foundations as a civilization, we're going to use that as a criteria, and that's how we're going to do our business. So in the Chinese case, the advantage is they have crushed dissent. We don't want to do that. We are a democracy. We want freedom. Chinese have in their grand narrative, there is no space for the separatists in Tibet or in the western provinces where they have a lot of Muslims and there are separatist movements going on. They crush them. They have no voice. And if the international people say you are violating human rights, why aren't you looking at their needs and their agenda? China is saying, get lost. We don't care. We don't care what you think about this. This is very different from the Indian mindset. I gave a talk once at the Indian Foreign Service Academy near Delhi, in Delhi, near GK2. where I sometimes stay. And I was invited by the director to address the young graduates who are becoming IFS officers all over the world. And I gave a talk on what is the Indian grand narrative. And I was surprised. 50% of them loved it and wanted more. 50%, the other 50% hated it and said, who are you to decide? How do we decide Indian grand narrative? I'm from Assam. I don't believe in an Indian grand narrative. Another one stood up and said, I'm Dalit. I don't buy this whole unified grand narrative. It's all kind of a propaganda to appropriate people like me. So the fragments, as per my book, Breaking India, the fragments are very strong in India and they prevent the creation of a grand narrative, a unified grand narrative, because you cannot have lots of grand narratives, then you don't have any. Okay. And if you don't have a grand narrative, you cannot have a foreign policy that people will respect, because they know they can always come to India and play one group against another. They can create a uprising with, they can get somebody, Kanchai Laya, they can get, there are a lot of people. I mean, I don't want to name anyone, but let's just say that's an illustrative example of a large number of people that are available, very easily available to undermine India at the slightest opportunity. So this unified view that China has is very important in the way it has been able to take over the think tank space and project their think tanks worldwide.
और हमारे देश के लिए अगर सबसे बड़ी एक समाज की मन में एक आवश्यकता है तो हमारी सोसाइटी हिस्ट्री कॉन्शियस होनी चाहिए. इतिहास को भुला देने वाली समाज व्यवस्था नहीं होनी चाहिए.